rented the smallest house on the block because it was cheap enough for a college budget and close enough to campus that I could bike to class. It wasn't much to look at, but it was quiet. And after spending my freshman year in a noisy apartment, quiet sounded perfect. 3 mornings after moving in, I opened the front door and found a trail of fresh, muddy footprints leading across my porch. They stopped inches from my welcome mat. There were no matching prints leaving. I stared at them longer than I should have before convincing myself they belonged to some drunk who'd wandered through the yard during the rain. I scrubbed the porch clean, bought a Ring-style camera that afternoon, and figured the problem was solved. At exactly 2 o'clock the next morning, my phone buzzed. Someone walked slowly up my driveway. The camera showed only the back of a hooded jacket. Whoever it was never looked toward the lens. They stepped onto the porch, rested one hand on my doorknob, and gently turned it. No rattling, no pushing, just a careful test, as though checking whether I'd remembered to lock it. After a few seconds, they let go, walked back down the driveway, and disappeared into the darkness. I replayed the clip 6 times. The face never appeared once. The same thing happened the next night, then the next. Always 2 a.m., always the same slow walk, always the same careful twist of the knob, always leaving without another sound. I started staying awake just before 2. I'd switch off every light and watch the live feed with my bedroom door locked. The strange part wasn't that someone kept coming. It was how calm they seemed. They never hurried, never peeked through the windows, never tried another entrance. They behaved like they already knew exactly what they wanted to check. After the 6th night, I called the police. An officer watched the recordings with me and admitted they were unsettling, but there wasn't much they could do without a crime being committed. They drove through the neighborhood more often and parked nearby a few nights. Somehow, the visitors still came. Even when a patrol car rolled past less than 5 minutes earlier, the figure arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, tested the knob, and vanished before anyone spotted them. Sleep became impossible. Every creak in the walls sounded like footsteps. The furnace kicking on made me grab my phone. Even daytime felt wrong, because I kept wondering whether someone had been standing outside while I slept. Neighbors noticed I looked exhausted. One elderly woman asked if I'd heard strange noises beneath my house at night. I laughed awkwardly and told her it was probably squirrels. She didn't laugh back. The visits continued for 2 full weeks. By then, I'd installed a second camera overlooking the backyard and another facing the basement entrance. I checked every lock before bed. I even pushed a chair under my bedroom doorknob, even though I knew it probably wouldn't help much if someone truly wanted inside. The 15th night changed everything. At 2 a.m., the familiar figure appeared again. Same hoodie, same slow walk, same careful hand on the doorknob. But this time they didn't leave. Instead, they stepped sideways until they disappeared beneath the front camera. I couldn't see them anymore. The motion alert stayed active because they were still there. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 20. The porch remained empty except for the edge of a sleeve that occasionally shifted into view. I turned the camera volume all the way up. At first, there was only wind brushing across the microphone. Then I heard breathing, very soft, and whispering too faint to understand. I almost called out through the camera's speaker, but something told me not to. Nearly 30 minutes later, the figure stood, walked down the driveway, and disappeared as always. I downloaded the recording and spent the next morning cleaning up the audio with free editing software I'd used for class projects. It took almost an hour before the whisper became understandable. I listened once, then again, then a third time because I couldn't believe it. The voice wasn't threatening me. It kept repeating the same sentence. Don't answer the back door, over and over. Don't answer the back door. My phone vibrated before I could process it. A notification from the backyard camera. I opened the clip. The timestamp matched the final seconds of the whispering. While the hooded stranger remained beneath the front camera, another person had appeared behind the house. This one wore dark clothes and gloves. They never went near the back door. Instead, they lifted the old basement window I'd forgotten to lock after airing out the laundry room earlier that day. They slipped inside without hesitation. I called 911 so fast I nearly dropped the phone. The dispatcher told me to lock myself in my bedroom. I heard faint thumps somewhere below my feet. Not loud, just careful movement beneath the floorboards. Police arrived within minutes, surrounding the house before entering. They found no one upstairs. The basement window stood open. A section of insulation had been pulled away inside the crawl space, revealing blankets, empty food wrappers, bottled water, and a flashlight. Someone had been living beneath my house. Detectives believed whoever entered through the window had escaped through a crawl space vent before officers reached the property. They couldn't explain the hooded person at my front door. They never appeared clearly enough for identification, and after that night, they never returned. I moved out before the semester ended. Months later, one detective called to tell me they still hadn't identified either person. Before hanging up, he mentioned something I'd never known. The supplies in the crawl space had been there for at least a week before I ever found those muddy footprints. Sometimes I replay the final recording just to make sure I remember it correctly. Every time the whisper ends, there's one extra sound buried beneath the wind. A quiet knock, not at the front door, from somewhere under the floor. My name is Ethan Mercer, and if you ever install security cameras because you think someone's walking around your house at night, make sure you watch the recordings before you convince yourself you're imagining things. I rented a small house on the edge of Asheville after a breakup. It backed up to a strip of dense woods that never seemed completely quiet. Every night, right around 3 a.m, I heard slow footsteps circling outside. Not running, not sneaking, just steady, patient steps across damp leaves. Whenever I looked through the windows, nothing was there. After the 4th night, I bought 4 security cameras. One covered the front porch, one the backyard, one the hallway, and another overlooked the living room. The live feeds looked perfectly normal. Empty yard, empty porch. Nothing moving except tree branches whenever the wind picked up. I finally slept better. The next morning, while scrolling through the recorded clips, I found a motion alert from 3:14 a.m. The backyard camera showed me opening the back door. I stared at the screen, waiting for myself to come back inside. Instead, I walked barefoot across the grass and stopped about 20 feet from the porch. Then I simply stood there. My arms hung at my sides, my head tilted slightly toward the woods. 8 minutes passed, 9, almost 10, without moving an inch. Then I calmly walked back inside and closed the door. I had absolutely no memory of any of it. At first, I blamed sleepwalking. I'd never done it before, but stress can do strange things. I even asked my doctor, who suggested improving my sleep habits and reducing caffeine. The footage kept coming. Every single morning, 3:14, door opens. I walk outside. I stand in exactly the same spot. Then I return, always facing the trees, never reacting to anything. I started setting alarms for 3 o'clock. They never helped. I'd wake up at 7 with the recordings already waiting for me. The hallway camera never showed me leaving my bedroom. It simply skipped from an empty hallway to me entering through the back door 10 minutes later. I reset the cameras twice. Nothing changed. My neighbor, Mr. Collins, agreed to stay awake one night in his own backyard. The next morning, he knocked on my door looking pale. "I saw you," he said quietly. "You were outside? You were standing there. Why didn't you call me?" "I did." He held up his phone. 3 missed calls to me. "I yelled your name too. I never heard you. You didn't even blink." That afternoon, I called the police. 2 officers searched the property, walked through the woods, checked for footprints, broken fences, anything, nothing. One officer suggested sleepwalking. The other asked if I'd been editing the footage. I almost wished I had. I bought another camera with a built-in motion sensor that outlined movement using glowing boxes. If anything crossed the yard, even in darkness, the software would track it. The live view stayed empty. That night, I forced myself to stay awake on the couch. At 2:50, I remember checking my phone. The next thing I knew, sunlight was shining through the windows. Another gap, another recording. I couldn't bring myself to watch it immediately. When I finally pressed play, my stomach tightened. There I was, 3:14, walking outside, standing perfectly still. The motion software locked onto me with a green outline. Then, 30 seconds later, a second outline appeared, human-sized, standing directly behind me, except there was nothing visible inside it. No face, no clothes, just empty air surrounded by a glowing box. The invisible shape remained still for nearly a minute. Then it slowly walked toward the house. The sensor followed every step. The back door, which I'd left closed after walking out, began opening by itself, slowly. The invisible outline crossed through the doorway. The door eased shut again. I never turned around. I stayed facing the woods until my usual 10 minutes were over. Then I walked back inside. The sensor still tracked the invisible shape. It stood just inside the doorway, waiting. The hallway camera never showed it, only me. I unplugged every camera that afternoon. Then, after convincing myself I needed proof, I plugged them back in before sunset. The final recording lasted only 11 minutes. Everything looked normal until 3:22. The backyard camera glitched with a burst of static. 1 second. When the picture returned, I wasn't standing near the woods anymore. I was inches from the camera, close enough that my face filled the frame. I was smiling, not the kind of smile someone makes for a picture. It looked practiced, like someone trying to imitate one. I stayed there without blinking until the recording ended. I never remembered leaving my bedroom. I erased every clip that morning, every backup, every copy. I moved out 3 days later. For a while, I convinced myself deleting the evidence had also buried whatever had happened in that backyard. Then, 6 weeks after settling into an apartment across town, my indoor bedroom camera sent me a motion alert at exactly 3:14 a.m. The recording never showed me getting out of bed. It began with me already standing beside the camera, smiling into the lens while something just outside the frame quietly opened my bedroom door. I worked the night shift as a security guard at a distribution warehouse on the edge of Columbus. Most nights were painfully routine. Empty loading docks, endless rows of shelves, forklifts parked like sleeping animals. The loudest sound was usually the hum of fluorescent lights or the wind tapping loose metal against the building. Then camera 12 started displaying tomorrow's date. The first time I noticed it, the monitor flickered twice before settling on a perfectly normal view of the south loading dock. The timestamp in the corner read 11:42 p.m. tomorrow. I checked the system clock. It was correct. I rebooted the recorder, but the same feed came back with the same impossible date. Nothing unusual happened in the video. A delivery driver dropped off paperwork. A raccoon wandered across the parking lot. A supervisor locked the gate. The next night, every single one of those things happened, right down to the raccoon pausing beneath the same light pole. I reported it to management. It's probably the recorder software, my supervisor, Rick, said while barely looking up from his email. These systems glitch all the time. The IT contractor updated the firmware, replaced cables, even swapped the monitor. Camera 12 kept showing tomorrow. At first, I treated it like a strange advantage. If tomorrow's feed showed rain, I'd bring a jacket. If a truck arrived early, I'd already know which dock to open. Every prediction came true, with uncomfortable precision. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary life arriving exactly on schedule. That changed on a Thursday. Around 1 a.m, the future recording skipped ahead several minutes. Flashing ambulance lights reflected off the warehouse windows. 2 paramedics hurried inside, pushing a stretcher. Police cruisers rolled into the parking lot moments later. The clip ended before showing why. I replayed it 6 times. There was no accident that night. Everyone finished their shift and went home. The following evening, I couldn't stop watching the clock. At 1:03 a.m., the first ambulance turned into the parking lot. Every vehicle parked exactly where I'd seen it. The same paramedics climbed out. One of the forklift operators had collapsed, from a previously undiagnosed heart condition. He survived, but watching tomorrow unfold frame by frame left me sitting in complete silence after the ambulance drove away. I stopped telling anyone about camera 12. Instead, every shift began with me watching tomorrow. Some nights showed nothing useful. Some warned me about minor equipment failures or surprise inspections. Then one recording lasted less than 30 seconds. It showed me sprinting through aisle G. The camera shook slightly as emergency lights flashed overhead. Behind me walked someone wearing our gray maintenance uniform. Not running, walking, steady, calm. His face stayed hidden beneath the brim of a dark cap, no matter which direction he turned. The recording ended just before he reached me. I stared at that clip until sunrise. The next evening I called Rick. "I'm not coming in. You sick? I just need the night." He sounded annoyed but approved the absence. Around midnight my phone rang. It wasn't Rick. It was Columbus Police. They asked if I'd worked that evening. When I said no, the officer paused. There was a homicide inside the warehouse. I drove there anyway. Red and blue lights painted the walls. Detectives moved through the building while employees stood together behind yellow tape. Rick recognized me. "You picked one strange night to stay home." The victim worked maintenance. His name was Daniel. He'd been found in aisle G. I looked toward the aisle entrance. For a second, I could have sworn someone in a gray maintenance uniform was standing there watching us. When another officer crossed my view, the figure was gone. I resigned the next morning. For weeks, I ignored every call asking me to return. Sleep slowly became normal again. Eventually, curiosity started replacing fear. I kept asking myself the same question. If camera 12 could see tomorrow, what else had it recorded? One rainy evening I drove back. The warehouse had already hired another guard. He remembered me and let me into the security office after I claimed I'd left something behind. The monitors looked exactly the same. Camera 12 still flickered. My replacement laughed. "That one's always acting weird." He stepped out to investigate a door alarm, leaving me alone. I opened the future archive. Only one recording appeared, 10 seconds long. The timestamp belonged to tomorrow night. The video showed me sitting exactly where I was, leaning toward the monitor. Nothing moved. 5 seconds passed. Then a hand slowly rested on my right shoulder. The sleeve was gray, maintenance uniform. I couldn't see the person's reflection in the monitor, only the hand. The recording filled with static. Signal lost. I pushed my chair back so fast it rolled into the wall. No one stood behind me. The office was empty. I left the warehouse without speaking to anyone. 3 days later, a detective called asking if I'd ever accessed the security system after leaving my job. Someone had discovered corrupted footage on the recorder's hard drive. Most of it couldn't be recovered, except for one frame. He emailed it to me because he couldn't explain what he was seeing. The picture showed the security office from camera 12. Every monitor was dark. The room was empty. My chair sat in the middle of the floor, still turned toward the screens. And although there wasn't a single person anywhere in the image, the chair looked like someone had just stood up from it because it was still spinning. My name is Ethan Walker. I was 31 years old when this happened in Bend, Oregon. The first text came at 2:43 in the morning. "You left your garage open." I reached for my phone, still half asleep. The number wasn't saved, and there wasn't anything else attached. No name, no photo, just those 5 words. My wife, Melissa, mumbled beside me. "What is it?" "Probably spam." I looked at the security app on my phone anyway. The garage camera showed exactly what I expected. Our closed garage door, my pickup parked inside, and nothing moving. I started typing wrong number when another message appeared. Refresh the camera. That made me sit up. I reopened the live feed. Everything looked the same for about 3 seconds. Then the picture skipped. The garage door was halfway open. A shadow crossed behind my truck. The feed immediately buffered before returning to normal. The garage sealed shut again as if nothing had happened. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand. Melissa asked if I was seriously going outside. "I just want to make sure," she sighed. "Lock the door behind you." Our neighborhood was quiet enough that every sound carried. A sprinkler clicked somewhere down the block. A dog barked once, then nothing. The garage door was closed. I checked the lock. Still engaged, I stepped inside anyway. Everything smelled like motor oil and cut lumber, exactly as it always had. My truck sat where I'd parked it after work. Nothing looked disturbed. I even checked behind the shelves. Empty. When I walked back into the house, another text arrived. "You looked in the wrong place." I stared at the screen. "Everything okay?" Melissa called from upstairs. "Yeah," I lied without thinking. The number wouldn't answer calls. I tried texting back. "Who is this?" The message failed to deliver. The next morning, I convinced myself someone had found a way to spoof my number. At work, I showed the messages to my friend Chris. He laughed. "Dude, someone's messing with you." How would they know I checked the garage? They guessed. They told me to refresh the camera. You probably imagined the glitch. I wanted to believe him. That evening, I changed every password connected to our security system. New Wi-Fi password, new account password, enabled two-factor authentication, the whole routine. Before bed, I checked every camera, front yard, backyard, driveway, garage. Everything looked perfect. At 1:58 a.m., my phone vibrated again. Better passwords. I didn't even unlock the phone before my stomach tightened. The second message arrived immediately afterward. The basement window still doesn't lock. We had a basement. Almost nobody knew that because homes in our part of Oregon rarely had one. The previous owner had converted it into a workshop decades earlier. I walked downstairs. The basement smelled cool and damp. Concrete walls, tool bench, storage shelves. The narrow window near the ceiling looked shut. I tested it. It slid open with almost no effort. Melissa hadn't been exaggerating when she'd said we should replace it. I locked it as best I could. Then I searched every corner. Nothing. No footprints, no broken glass, no signs anyone had been inside. The texts stopped for 4 nights. Life almost returned to normal. Then our neighbor knocked on the door. "You guys expecting visitors late at night?" "No. I've seen somebody walking past your house around 3 every morning." My heart skipped. "What do they look like?" "Hard to tell." He shrugged. "They always stay on the sidewalk. Hood up, never look at the houses." "Did you call the police?" "I figured they were just exercising." He paused. "Until they stopped outside your place. That night I left every exterior light on. Nothing happened. The night after that, still nothing. By the end of the week, I started feeling embarrassed for worrying. Then Melissa asked something that made me stop. "Did you move the chair in the basement?" "No, it was facing the window." I went downstairs. The folding chair sat directly beneath the basement window, facing outside. I knew I hadn't left it there. Melissa insisted she hadn't touched it. Neither of us could explain it. I checked the cameras. The basement wasn't covered. I ordered another camera online. It arrived 2 days later. Motion activated. Night vision. Cloud recording. I installed it before dinner. At 2:51 a.m., the motion alert woke me. I opened the clip. Nothing moved. The empty workshop filled the screen. The chair remained beneath the window. Then the audio picked up something. 3 slow knocks. Not on the window. From somewhere inside the basement. The camera didn't move. No figure appeared. Just another knock, knock, knock. I replayed it 6 times. Melissa listened without saying a word. We searched the basement together. Nothing. The next afternoon, I reviewed every recording. Hours of silence. Until one strange moment. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the camera briefly lost focus. For less than a second. When the image sharpened again, the chair faced the opposite direction. No transition, no person, just a different position. I sent the footage to the camera manufacturer. They replied that the file showed no signs of editing or corruption. The police couldn't do much without evidence of trespassing. One officer suggested neighborhood kids. Another blamed wireless interference. Neither explanation fit. The texts came back. "Don't leave tonight." Melissa wanted to stay with her sister. I almost agreed. Something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity. Maybe I wanted to catch whoever had been tormenting us. I kept every light off except the living room lamp. Around 3, headlights swept across the front window. A car drove past, then another. Then silence settled over the neighborhood again. I watched the security feeds. Nothing. Driveway empty, backyard empty, garage empty. Then the basement camera triggered. I opened it. The chair was gone, not moved, gone. The room looked larger without it. I ran downstairs. Melissa followed. The chair stood at the bottom of the basement stairs. Neither of us had heard it move. Neither of us had heard footsteps. The phone buzzed in my pocket. Wrong place again? That was enough. We left. Spent the rest of the night in a hotel. The locksmith replaced every lock. The security company upgraded our system. Police increased patrols. For almost a month, nothing happened. Then I received one final notification. Not a text. An email from the cloud storage service. It informed me that an older recording had finished processing after repeated upload failures. The timestamp matched the very first night. I opened it. The garage door never opened. No shadow crossed behind my truck. Instead, the camera had captured something much worse. While I had been standing inside the garage with my flashlight, someone was already in the house. The living room camera showed a figure standing perfectly still at the top of the staircase, watching me through the open door leading into the kitchen. The recording ended before I walked back inside. The police enlarged every frame. The image was too dark for identification. No fingerprints, no DNA, no sign of forced entry. Just a silent person who somehow entered our house, stood there for nearly 4 minutes, and disappeared before I came back through the front door. We sold the house 6 months later. The buyers never asked why. Sometimes late at night, I still open my security app before going to sleep, not because I'm worried about what's outside, because every now and then I catch myself wondering what I never thought to check behind me.